Thanks. Good morning. So, a couple Thanksgivings ago, I started in our family a little mason jar that every time God answers a prayer, we write it down, we put it in the mason jar because everybody in this room over the last year, last month, this morning when you woke up, we're pleading, God, would you just show up in my life? Right? And look, I'm not talking about, the doubting Thomas, and unless I, put my hand in the wound. I'm just saying, will you just show up, right? And God does, and the reason we did this mason jar is because, God answers a prayer, and we're like, okay, check box and move on to the next one. And I realized when I saw the email about Mark coming that I needed to put something in a jar, although it wasn't there, 10 years ago, because of you, Mark. So we're on a weekend, we're on a hotel, going into a hotel room, my daughter sitting on her legs, rocking back and forth, and Daddy, my knee, it just hurts so bad. Okay, babe, we'll get some Advil, and so next day we go to see the doctor, and growing pains, right? Growing pains. So this is going on, and 5 weeks later, she's watching 60 Minutes with her mom, and Mark's telling a story. And she turns to her mom and says, that's what I have. Her mother, Susan's like, Rachel, you don't have cancer. The doctors would know if you have cancer. I'm traveling. She calls me the next day. So that's Sunday night. She wakes up Monday morning, and it wasn't an audible voice, but it was God showing up nonetheless, saying, no. This is not growing pains. She calls me and I say, look, we're the parents. Just demand tests, x-ray. Well, you all know when you go to a doctor, first thing they do, take blood pressure and they weigh you. So it's been 5 weeks and she had lost 12 pounds. 11-year-olds don't lose 12 pounds in 5 weeks. So that put us on a completely different trajectory. The reason I was excited about coming and introducing you, Mark, is God showed up in your life. And you showed up in mine. Who knows how long we would have bumped down the road of growing pains when 11 months later she passed and is with the Lord, and every single day was precious that we got to count because of your faithfulness and God showing up in your life. So Mark, come tell us your story. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Wow, that's well. Gosh, man, Rachel sounds like she was absolutely amazing, and I'm glad that being able to share your story, share my story, was able to give you guys at least some solace and some knowledge about what is happening, right? I think that's comes down to a lot of our lives is what's happening. God, just tell me what's actually going on, because I think maybe I know. But it always turns out that we really don't know, right? We don't necessarily know what God's plan is. But thank you guys, first of all, for having me today. Thank you, Eric, for, first of all, being a welcoming neighbor. We moved here in May. I have a 20-month-old son right now. His name is Boston, which I know can be confusing. And when I told John Mara, the owner of the New York Giants, he was like, "Oh, what are you going to name your son?" I said, "Boston." He said, "You hate us that much?" But as with most things, it was partially my decision. And my wife is from Boston. We both went to Boston College, and so at the end of the day, when it came down to it. It wasn't my choice, right? My wife said, we're naming our son Boston. You better like it or, get used to it. And so I loved it. And it's a good, so that'd be my first lesson today. Do what your wife says. But no, so Boston's been fantastic, and playing with your kids out in the park has been just absolutely great. So, and it's funny, when you come to a new town, right, you have you have neighbors. And where we lived in Jersey, neighbors were just people who lived next to you or around you, and you saw them maybe when you put your trash out. Well, we moved to Rowayton, Connecticut, and we live on a cul-de-sac. And I didn't know this about cul-de-sacs, but your neighbors become really your family, and you got to learn who they are. And so when you first get there, you get introduced to everybody, and so you have to try to like come up with little monikers to remember who's who, right? So we have the guy next door on the left side who seems like he's the mayor of our circle, and he tells everybody kind of what's happening, what to do, what not to do. So he's the mayor, and then we're like, who's Eric? And he was the guy with the hair. He just had all the hair, and it's right. The hair adds a couple extra inches too. But he had this like full head of hair, this full beard in the summer. I was like, he's the hair guy. So thank you to Eric, the hair guy, and he's also the guy who brought me here. So I appreciate that. But we moved into this house, right? And I'm one of those guys. So I have. We have all these social media apps, and we all have these apps on our phones, and sometimes we get a little bit too obsessed with certain apps. And I would say I have a vice. I am a little bit too obsessed with Pinterest, which you may or may not know about this app, but this is an app that has a lot of ideas for different things that at the swipe of your finger, and it's a lot of do-it-yourself projects. So I am like a self-proclaimed do-it-yourself guy. I have a pickup truck just because maybe once a year I'll go to Home Depot and get some lumber to bring it back to the house, but at least I have it. And when we moved in this house, it was like, okay, my opportunity to do it yourself for everything. And my wife does not like that about me, because I will go through Pinterest and I'll say, hey, oh man, there's this idea for shelving. Oh man, I'm going to build the hell out of these shelves. Do I have the right tools for this? No. Do I have the right space for this? No. Do I have any measurements? No. But I'm going to do it anyways. And I go to my wife and say, I'm going to build these shelves. And she says, okay, well, we're going away in 2 weeks. They need to be done by 2 weeks. And I said, no problem. So go to the store, get all the lumber. Don't have the right tools. Got to go back to the store, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Well, 2 weeks come and go, and I have about one shelf done. And the rest is my clothes everywhere in the house. The closet is not finished. And my wife looked at me and said, I knew you weren't going to get it done. I knew you weren't going to get it done. And I said, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. She said, wasn't there instructions in this do-it-yourself Pinterest post? I said, yeah, there were instructions, but I thought I knew better. I thought I could do it myself. It looked like an easier way to do it. And she said, why don't you just shut up sometimes and listen to me? And listen to me. And shut up and listen. Seems kind of crude, right? Seems like, man, why don't we just shut up and listen? But I was reading through the Bible too, and I was reading the book of Job, and you were talking about a guy who consistently talks back to God thinking he knows best, thinking that he knows that he has the right blueprint or the right instructions for his life. And Job 40, Job answered God after God made all these really, really good points about why he knows best. And Job answered, he said, I'm speechless in awe, words fail me, I should have never opened my mouth. I talk too much, way too much, I'm ready to shut up and listen. And I go, Danielle, you've been reading the Bible? You've been reading the Bible? Did you happen to open the book for me? But shut up and listen. And I'm going to tell you about my story. And, what brought me here, and obviously, what got me through the journey parts of my life that we had just heard about. But a lot of it is just stopping and calming your mind and starting to listen to God. Well, I grew up outside of Philadelphia in Wayne, Pennsylvania, and went to Boston College. I was recruited as a football player on scholarship. Get up there and had a lot of success throughout my first few years of football at BC. Came in, started as a true freshman, and by the end of my junior season was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year in the conference. I was projected to be a top 5 draft pick in the next year's draft. I was doing well academically, on honor roll. Things were starting to kind of come easily for me. And I started to picture kind of what my life was going to be like. Ever since I was a little kid, you dream kind of these big, elaborate dreams of maybe one day playing in the NFL, playing football on TV. And it looked like this was about to be a reality. We play a bowl game at the end of my junior year in Nashville, the Music City Bowl, and we play Vanderbilt. And we lose that game and walk off the field and go home, and we have a little bit of a break between when we end the bowl game and when we have to come back for spring workouts. And I'm at home, and my mom, so I get my size and my willingness to hit people with my face from my father. But the athletic ability all comes from my mom. She is the athlete in the family. She actually grew up in Rowayton here, and so because she grew up here, one of our favorite pastimes is playing squash when I go home for break. Now, I go to different places around the country, and when I go home, when I will talk about this part, I will say, does anybody know what squash is? And very few people raise their hand, and if they do, they think it's a pumpkin of sorts. And I know I'm safe speaking in Darien that pretty much everybody here knows what squash is. So I'm at home, I'm playing squash with my mom, and I get this pain in my leg. And you think maybe it's just residual left over from a football game. I was just hitting people 2-3 days ago. But my mom was like, hey, let's stop and take a break. You can rest, we'll come back out tomorrow. Well, that pain continued. And this pain in my left leg continued over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And during that 6 months, I went back up to school, tried to do workouts. I couldn't compete with my team. It got to the point where they were sending me to specialists all over the Boston area to do x-rays and MRIs of my back, and they thought maybe it was a slipped disc pinching on a nerve, and I got epidurals, and nothing seemed to help. And it really boiled down to this one night. During this day, leading up to this night, I was approached by one of my teammates. And he was a senior. He was a captain. And he came up to me and said, Mark, I know you had a lot of success this year, but we talked to the trainers, and they said they can't tell us what is wrong, why you're not working out with the team, why you're not participating, why you're not practicing. You need to put your success in the past and start coming out and toughening up and playing with us. And I always thought to myself, maybe this guy's right. Like, maybe I'm starting to think like I am better than everybody else, and this pain is just in my mind, and I can just get over it. And maybe it's not as bad as it seems. And so the next day, or that day, I go back out and go back on the practice field, and I started try running around, and my leg is dragging behind me a little bit, and I just pushed through. I said, I'm just going to push. I got to be there for my guys. I got to push through. And that night, I laid in my bed and woke up at 2 in the morning in pain, in screaming pain. And I got on the phone and I called my dad, who's been really a sounding board for me my entire life. And I called him. I said, Dad, I don't know what to do. My leg is in so much pain. And, I getting drug tested. I can't take any strong pain medication, can't take anything like that. And so my dad, he gave me this credit card, right, an emergency credit card going off to college. And he said, only use these for emergencies. And so he told me, he said, that emergency credit card I gave you? He said, take that and go down to the local pub. In the Western movies, they used to drink whiskey to make their pain go away. Go and get some drinks and whiskey and see how you feel. And that was my dad's fatherly advice. And who knows? It worked. That worked. You drink enough and your pain starts going away. And I ended up jogging back to my dorm room. Again, your pain might go away, but your decision-making process doesn't get all that much better. So I jogged back to my dorm. The next morning, I woke up in just excruciating pain. And I went back home to Philadelphia after the spring semester, after 6 months of having this pain, and my mom was on a warpath to figure out what was wrong. We had MRIs, more MRIs done, more x-rays done, and I'm driving back from one doctor's appointment, getting ready to go to another doctor's appointment, and Dr. Smith, the orthopedic doctor who did my MRI, calls me and says, "Mark, are you with your parents?" I said, "Actually, I'm in the car with them right now." He said, "You guys need to turn around and go down to Pennsylvania Oncology Department right now. They're waiting for you. They have your MRI results." And I'm sitting in the front seat, and my dad's driving, my mom's in the back, and I turned to my dad and I said, "Dad, that was Dr. Smith. He said we need to go down to Pennsylvania Oncology." And I could hear my mom in the back take a deep breath and hold it, and my dad said, "I'm sure it's just cautionary, but let's go down and see what they have to say." And so we drive down about a half hour into Philadelphia, and we're sitting in the waiting room. And, you know, certain moments in your life, doesn't matter how long ago they happen, are crystal clear. And sitting in that waiting room, I was, you know, they had the magazines out, and I was reading People magazine. And I remember on the cover, crystal clear, was Jessica Simpson. And she had just lost like 50 pounds. And I remember reading this article and feeling so good for Jessica. It was like, man, good for you, Jess. You just lost 50 pounds. You're doing your thing. And I'm feeling happy. It was such a really random thing to feel happy about. Then I get called into the doctor's office. And they go in the doctor's office, and there's the rubber table in the front with a little piece of toilet paper on it that really only protects about a third of the table anyway, so I'm not exactly sure why it's on the table. But I sit on that little piece of toilet paper, and my mom and my dad are on my right. And to the back left, the door opens, and 4 doctors walk in to the room. And one doctor comes up and starts talking to me as the other one starts putting my MRI images on the light board and flicks the light on. And I don't know if you guys are the same way, but anytime I start seeing those pictures on the computer screen or get that light board flicked on, I automatically feel like I just went to medical school and can read this perfectly, and I'm looking at it trying to like decipher everything in this picture. And I'm looking at it, and I just don't have any idea what I'm looking at, but I know that there's something wrong because my right leg looks like a leg, has dark parts around it, looks like a picture I've seen in school with a little bone right through the middle of it, and my left leg was completely white. And the doctor starts talking to me and says, "Mark, you see that white part in your MRI? Well, that white part signifies fluid, and a tumor is made up of about 99% fluid. I'm sorry to tell you this, but you have a large tumor in your left femur. That's the pain you've been experiencing." And so I sit there and I listen, and I'm kind of in shock, trying to decipher exactly what he's saying. And he said, "Mark, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you have cancer." And when I heard that word cancer, it was almost like I'm tipping back on my chair. You know, you get to that tipping point in school and you feel like you got to catch yourself. And there was no catching it. It was a free fall. And I remember falling and then being kind of jolted out of the fall by my dad, who turned to the doctor and said, "Doc, what does this mean for Mark's future? He is a very good football player and was hoping to make a career out of this. When will he be able to play football again?" And my mother, who was within striking distance of my father, who happened to also be named Sandy, wherever Rocky is, my mother took a backhand and put it right in my dad's chest. Says, "Sandy, what are you thinking about football for right now? We just got told our son has cancer." It's a very rational thing to do. But it was interesting. I was sitting on that table, and I was thinking the same exact thing. When would I be able to play football again? And for me, it wasn't about the sport, really. It wasn't about the competition or the idea that I might go to the NFL or anything like that. It was just about identity. Certain times in your life and for certain things, they become so ingrained into what you do that they become a part of your identity. And for me at that point in my life, if I was to introduce myself to someone, I would have introduced myself and say, "Hi, I'm Mark Herzlich. I live in Wayne, PA. I have a younger brother, Brad. These are my two parents, and I play football." And of all those things I would have told somebody, the only thing that I got to choose was the football. Everything else was dictated for me in my life. And it's interesting how that one thing you decide to share about yourself usually is the thing you care about the most, what you identify yourself with. And as I'm sitting there waiting for the answer, I'm focused. Hey, when am I going to be able to play again? And the doctor turns to my dad and said, "Mr. Herzlich, I'm sorry. Mark will never be able to play football again. The damage to his leg through the radiation and the chemotherapy and the surgery are going to be so bad that if all goes well, meaning if he lives, he'll have to walk with a cane for the rest of his life." And once he said that, I shut down. The only thing I remember next is getting in the car and putting in my headphones in and listening to music as we drove home. And I got home to my house and laid in my bed. And for about 2 hours, I just fell into this deep mindset of why me? Why did this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? And I looked around my room and saw on the wall there's a picture of me from high school. I was playing running back, and I was big and strong. I was in high school. I was 6'4", 260, playing running back, and I was stiff-arming this little guy. Not kind of Eric size, not that you're little, but it was, in comparison, it was like that. And stiff-arming this guy. Yeah, no, I know, yeah. But with my left leg, the leg I just told could kill me, planted in the ground. And I looked at that picture and I said, that leg right there, that is not going to be what kills me. That is not going to be what defines me. It's not going to be what dictates the rest of my life. And I walked downstairs and there was nothing behind that besides faith in the fact that I could say that and it would come true. And I walked downstairs and found my dad sitting in kind of a dark kitchen, and he comes over to me as I approach him, and I just grabbed him and I hugged him. And I said, "Dad, it's going to be okay. I'm going to play football again, and I'm going to beat this." And over the next 7 months, we started fighting. And it was the chemotherapy, it was the radiation, it was really everything that we could throw at this thing, we threw at it. And we came together as community, and it was, people in town bringing meals. It was the doctors believing in what we could do. It was the nurses coming together, and it was my family just pulling there with me. When you get diagnosed with something like this, or you get given bad news that pertains to you, it's isolating. Sometimes you feel like, okay, this is my fight, and it's my struggle alone. And that, it becomes lonely. It becomes a lonely feeling. And I found that when I was able to open my battle up and let other people in to help, then I was helped. And I did not feel like I was fighting it alone. And so we did this fight, and we got through the chemotherapy, did 50 cycles of radiation. Every morning I would go in for radiation in the morning, go for chemotherapy in the afternoon, and then back into radiation again at night for 5 weeks. After 4 months of this, I am getting ready to go back up to school. I go back up to college, and I'm traveling back and forth from Boston to Philadelphia for treatments, and it's just, it's a lot, but it's, again, I get to be with my family, and I'm back home, and then we get to the end of October, October 31st, big day in college, Halloween, got all the parties, and I just finished a full week of chemotherapy, and my buddies, my teammates, They're like, Mark, will you want to come out to a Halloween party with us? I was like, guys, no, I just had chemotherapy all week. I'm not really up for it. And they said, dude, it's just chemo. Let's go. Get your costume on. And I'm like, thank God for you guys. Thank God for you guys. And I, used another, it's a Halloween party, right? So I didn't have a costume. So I said, guys, I don't have a costume. This is a perfect out. Don't have to go. They said, dude, you're bald. Just throw on a white T-shirt. You're Mr. Clean. Let's go. And by God, it was the best Halloween costume I ever had. I was the perfect Mr. Clean. I actually I had white jeans for some reason. I don't know why. So I put on my white jeans, a white T-shirt, and then I was like, what's missing? Oh, I don't have eyebrows. So I used whiteout to paint eyebrows on, and I was Mr. Clean, and we went out that night, and we had a great party. It was at Who's On First by Fenway Park. Fantastic. And the party comes to an end, and I couldn't even imagine it anymore. But after these parties in college, you go to after parties, and they're like, all right, we're going to this after party at this other place. Do you want to go? I said, sure. And this guy goes, hey, I came with a bunch of these girls. You want to start getting them to go? And I said, yeah, sure. That sounds really good too. So I said, how will I know which girls? They said, they're all dressed like cowgirls. I said, perfect. How many? 7. All right, 7 cowgirls. So I start wrangling up these cowgirls. See what I did there? I did that. So I start wrangling up these cowgirls to go. And I said, okay, we're going here. Okay, great, great, great. So I get to the last cowgirl number 7. And I'm like, hey, you want to go to this after party? And she looks at me and goes, who do you think you are? So that's a very good point. I'm kind of concerned that no one else asked this before right now. But I said, my name's Mark, and Tony said that you came with him. And she goes, oh, you know Tony? I said, what is this? I was like, what is this, the mob? And she goes, oh, you know Tony? Okay, let's go. So I'm like, okay, this chick's kind of cool. So we start going, and I'm like, hey, can I get your number? Like, trying to work my way in that way. And eventually, throughout the night, she said yes. She gave me her number. And so, when you get a girl's number, you got to wait a little bit in order to call her, or else you'll look very desperate. So, I waited, the allotted, 35 minutes after I left her. And I called, and I kept calling about 3 or 4 times that night. No answer. And then the next night, I called again. No answer. And then the third night, I called, and it picked up on the 2nd ring. And she said, stop calling me. Leave me alone. I said, I'm so sorry. I just had a really good time with you the other night. I wanted to see if you wanted to go and grab dinner with me. She was like, oh, that's actually very nice. I would love to grab dinner with you. I said, awesome. I think the cafeteria is open for another hour. You want to meet me down there? And she got bamboozled into having dinner with me at the cafeteria. But we go down to the cafeteria, have a great time, and we end up starting seeing each other and starting dating. And about 2 months in, we've been hanging out a ton. And a lot of our hangouts have been based around doing activities. We'd go on runs together. We would go and, play Frisbee golf together. We'd do a bunch of different things together. And I realized after about 3.5 weeks that we were getting dangerously close to the friend zone. I didn't know if she thought that I was romantically interested, or if she thought I thought she was my bro. And that all came down until one night when she called me. And this is a big call to get as a college male. She said, hey, my roommates are out tonight. Would you like to come over and watch a movie? I said, I'm not a bro anymore. I'm not a bro anymore. So I put on my Axe body spray and my best sweatpants, and I marched my way over to her dorm. And I'm thinking on the way, okay, hoping for a movie, a certain type of movie, maybe a scary movie, so I can get her in close and protect her, or a romantic comedy, so I can show my soft side and cry a little bit. There's a couple of different options. I could make a lot of them work. And we get in, and we sit down, we're on the futon, which futons are always a good thing for this type of deal too, because they're convertible. Let's just leave it at that. And she puts the movie in, and down the DVD in, and the screen is blue, and then this white castle comes up, and a little star flies right over the castle. And Goes, Disney's Monsters, Inc. And I was like, this is not what I prepared for. This is not it at all. Back in the bro zone, but that's all right. And so we watched the movie. It's a fantastic movie. If you've checked it out, that's great. So we watched the movie, and then afterwards, we started talking, and we just talked and talked and talked about everything, about life, about just like who we were. And she stopped at one point and said, Mark, I want to tell you something that I've never told to anyone before. And I said, okay. And she said, but it's hard for me to tell. So would you mind just not saying anything for a little bit and letting me speak and just listen? And I said, sure. And so she started talking, and she started telling me about her childhood and about her life and about how every day when she would come home from school, there would be abuse in her house. About how her father instilled fear and pain to her both emotionally, mentally, and physically. And she said she had never felt safe around a man before until that night, watching Monsters, Inc. on the futon with me. And I was going through my chemotherapy still at the time, and I was sitting there, and when Mr. Clean takes off those eyebrows and that white shirt, he's just a bald dude on a couch. And that's what I was. And at the point where I could have felt the least like a man, with no strength, with no real future, with that NFL success stripped away from me, sitting there on that couch, I realized that I felt more like a man listening to this woman be completely vulnerable than I ever felt like before. And she turned back to me after she finished telling me her story, and she said, do you think any less of me? And I said, I couldn't think any more of you. I couldn't think any more of you. And I left that night, and the futon stayed a couch the entire time. Watched Monsters, Inc. But I realized in that night something that same girl reminded me of just recently, is that when you shut up and listen, is when you just shut up and listen, some really incredible things can happen. And God knew it. Job found that out. And I came back from the cancer. I finished my treatments, was declared cancer-free, got back out on the football field for the Boston College Eagles. I signed as an undrafted free agent for the New York Giants. Went through the whole first season, ended up being a starter by week 13. Broke my ankle in week 16, but then was on the field when the confetti came down to win the Super Bowl. And right along with me the whole time was that cowgirl number 7, that girl who had taught me so much about just listening to what life has to bring, about when obstacles can come in your way, how you can fight through those, you can learn from them, and you can push on to succeed, because when God says that he will send you a helper suitable, well, then when you will find your wife and leave your family for that person and become one flesh, you don't just do that because you need someone to help you. That's not what that means. It's not like, hey, I'm doing everything by myself, and when I need help, you got me. It's like you become the best of both people. And Danielle taught me that fight. And she had gone through so much of that struggle early in her life that when she was able to share that with me, it built me, taught me what it meant to be a man. And as that confetti was streaming down and we were all running together, and I remember looking over, and I had forgotten about this. You see it after the Super Bowl when they're on the field and they're doing the trophy presentation and all the people's families are with them, but I had forgotten that the families come on the field after the game. And so I'm on the field, and I look over to this tunnel, one of the tunnels, and apparently towards the end of the game, my dad, Sandy, who you guys haven't met him, but he has a very awesome, like Tom Selleck mustache, and he's had it since the 70s. It really, he wouldn't be him without it. And I look over to this tunnel, and apparently he had worked his way up to the very front of the line. And so really all I see running at me in full speed is a mustache. And there's this 215-pound mustache just coming right at me. And, you know, it was, this was kind of the romantic comedy moment, right? This was the slow-mo run at each other embrace that, you know, I'd been yearning for back in college. But this happened, and we embraced each other, and we hugged again. And I told my dad, I said, we did it. We did it. From that first embrace after we thought that all was lost, saying that we were going to beat the cancer, we were going to be back and playing football, and just that symbolizing being stronger. And to be there on that field, embracing him, coming full circle, we had done it. And Danielle was there, and we ended up getting, it wasn't that year, it was after a few years later, we got married right here at Rowayton United Church, and the United Church of Rowayton, and had our reception at Weeburn on the beach, and we got, that was a party. Wish I'd known all you guys then. You guys would have been partying like crazy. We were dancing on tables, but all that being said, because now with that success, right, when you get a Super Bowl ring, it just means something, right? You can have, you know, a something that comes after your name. Mark Herzlich, Super Bowl champion. Mark Herzlich, cancer survivor, Super Bowl champion. And when we got that, right, when that comes to you, what do you do with it? And I know plenty of people who that just becomes something and they don't do anything with it. But what we decided was that we were going to take that platform and create a purpose behind the platform. And I think it's, you know, it's what we talked about earlier. It's like when God graces you with the ability to overcome a hardship, when God graces you with the ability to make money, when God graces you with the ability to have a family, what do you do with that? And so what we've done is we've taken this ring to be a platform for this one. And we've championed relationships, and we've championed God's calling and God's purpose to healthy, safe relationships for our kids, and for getting people to come out of the tragedy and walk into His light. Because at the end of the day, a lot of times struggle occurs, and all it is an opening, a window to see God's light shine through. And so I want to thank you guys so much for having me. This is a fantastic group. I will be back because this is community. This is what community is about. It's one thing to see people at a beach and to hang out and have a beer, which I am all for that. But when you can come to community in God's presence, that's what it's all about. So I'd always had a background in faith. I grew up going to a Presbyterian church on Sundays, and once I got confirmed and had the option, I stayed at home and watched football, just kind of how it was. And then when I was about 2 weeks after I was diagnosed, I was laying on the beach in New Jersey, just finished a first round of chemotherapy, and I got a phone call for some random number in Louisiana. And it was this guy named Walter Musgrove, and he called me, and I don't know why I picked up, but I did. And he said, "Hey, I saw your story on ESPN and wanted to reach out because I also had cancer, and I was a football player, and he was running down the field on the semifinal game. He broke his collarbone on a tackle, and when doing the X-ray and MRI of his collarbone, they found a tumor in his chest. And without that break, which he was cursing God for, they would never have found that tumor. He said, because of that break, I found the tumor, was able to be healthy again, and I want to encourage you to pray. He said, pray and pray specifically. He said, it helped me immensely. And I remember that night, I laid in my bed, and I hadn't prayed in a long time, and I felt like I was writing a journal entry. I was like, dear God, I don't know if you remember me, I'm Mark. Please heal me of cancer, and please let me play football again. And that kind of became a habitual prayer every morning and night until it became the burden of the cancer became too much for me to carry on my own. We started reading the Bible at that time too, and in one passage, I think it was in 1 Peter, said, cast your cares on me because I care for you, right? And so started just saying, hey, look, I can't do this myself. I can't be like the rock for everybody around me and hold all this burden, so you need to take it. You said you would, just take it. And immediately I felt this weight lifted off me. And from that moment on, I said, wow, this God dude, he's the real deal. Let me find out more. Started going to Hillsong Church in New York City, in Jersey, and now go in Norwalk to Hillsong. And it really changed my life, changed our family's life. And the best part about all that is that now we get to raise our son, Boston, with Jesus. And so, that's my favorite part of the day. We sit down every night. He's only 1.5. We say, who do you want to pray for? And he goes, Mama, Dada. I'm like, good start. And then he goes on from there. But, that's why. Thank you. Just want to close in prayer and thank you, Lord, for giving me this opportunity to share your voice, your words with these men this morning as we come to this place from all different walks of life, from all different careers, all different struggles, and all different past hurts. Can we let you shine your light into each one of us through those broken parts of our vase, through those broken parts of our exterior shell? Let your light shine through them and infiltrate us as men, and let that light then shine out from us into our communities. Amen. Thank you.